Go to Ecclesiastes 9. Ecclesiastes chapter 9. All right, we'll go ahead and read through this chapter. Verse 1, it says, "For all this I considered in my heart, to declare all this, that the righteous and the wise and their works are in the hand of God. No man knoweth either love or hatred by all that is before them. All things come alike to all. There is one event, to the righteous and to the wicked, to the good and to the clean and to the unclean, to him that sacrificeth, to him that sacrificeth not, and as is the good, so is the sinner. And he that sweareth is he that feareth an oath. This is an evil among all things that are done under the sun, that there is one covenant unto all. Yea, also the heart of the sons of men is full of evil, and madness is in their heart, while they live, and after that they go to the dead. For to him that is joined to all the living there is hope, for a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything, neither have they any more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Also their love and their hatred and their envy is now perished, neither have they any more portion forever in anything that is done under the sun. Go thy way, eat thy bread with joy, and drink thy wine with a merry heart, for God now accepteth thy works. Let thy garments be always white, and let thy head lack no ointment. Live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of thy life of thy vanity, which he hath given thee under the sun, all the days of thy vanity, for that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labor which thou takest under the sun. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might, for there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest. I returned, and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all. For a man also knoweth not his time, as fishes that are taken in an evil net, and as the birds that are caught in the snare, so are the sons of men snared in an evil time, when it falleth suddenly upon them. This wisdom have I seen also under the sun, and it seemed great unto me, that there was a little city, and few men within it, and there came a great king against it, and besieged it, and built great bulwarks against it. Now there was found in it a poor wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city, yet no man remembered that same poor man. And then said I, wisdom is better than strength. Nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard. The words of the wise men are heard and quiet more than the cry of him that ruleth among fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroyeth much good." All right, well here Solomon is, again, kind of looking at the world, and he determines, really kind of for the first time saying it explicitly, this truth has been seen in part, but now he reveals it in kind of black and white terms. But he determines that all things, both men and their works, are, quote, in the hands of God. And so this is a truth that is kind of underlined in much of the teachings that Solomon has given in the first 8 chapters. But this is really the first time where he stated it so blankly. However, the curious thing is that sometimes, and he mentions this in verse 1, sometimes it's hard to determine whether or not God is dealing in love or hatred. And so he's saying God is over all. He's sovereign over all. All their works, they're all in the hands of God. But sometimes it seems like he's dealing in love. Sometimes it seems like he's dealing in hatred. And so he says this for the seemingly universal treatment of all people. And what I mean by that is both the righteous, both the wicked, both the good, both the clean, both those who sacrifice, those who don't sacrifice, there in verse 2. All of them have the same end. And this has been a common theme in the book of Ecclesiastes, that all in the end, they all go to the dead. But the problem is, a living dog is better than a dead lion, right? And so obviously, dogs were very much looked down upon in the culture of the Hebrews, and a lion was majestic, king, mighty, but a living dog is better than a dead lion. And so, when we think of life and death in these terms, again, it leads Solomon to say, listen, I know God's in control, but sometimes I don't know if it's love or hatred that's emanating out from him. And so why then, asks Solomon, does it seem that death and evil are there all there is in the world? Now, it makes sense. And again, coming from that under the sun perspective, it makes sense that this would be the case. if you're looking at the world from the secularist position, it makes sense that what you're going to see is evil everywhere around you, because if there is nothing meaningful for which people to live by, why not live however you please? If there's no moral standard, if there's no objective truth that's a guiding principle for how you're supposed to live, why wouldn't you just eat, drink, and be merry? And so to that, again, he's leading the secularists to say, you have no standard by which to object to these things. You have nothing to stand upon to say that this is a bad thing. This is an evil thing. Why is there even something considered evil or something considered good? Why is there moral standards at all under the sun? Again, from that perspective. However, that's not enough for Solomon. Again, he's always trying to get to the truth. After all, the dead know nothing. They do nothing. They are forgotten. Right? And so there's something more to this. And so it is in life where we find wisdom. It is in life where we enjoy the good gifts of God. And so he comes back to another familiar theme, which is enjoying the gifts of God. And so Solomon tells us to go live and enjoy our life, particularly to enjoy those whom God has given you. Whenever we do that, whenever we go, whenever we live, whatever we do, we need to do it with thy might. Do all that you can to the best of your ability, because what you're going to glean out of that are the gifts that God are giving to you. And we should do this because he says, God now accepteth thy works. And what he means by that is essentially this has been approved by God. This is acceptable to God. To quote Constable, he said, this encouraging word does not contradict the fact that we are the stewards of all that God entrusts to us. However, verse should help us realize that it is not sinful to take pleasure in what God has given us, even some luxuries. We need to balance gratefulness and generosity, keeping some things and giving away others. This balance is not easy, but it is important. And you have people constantly falling on both sides of this, but it seems like more often than not, people fall on the side of, Christians should have nothing. Christians should own nothing. Christians should give everything away, and you shouldn't have $1 to your name. You shouldn't have a piece of land to your name. You shouldn't own a home. You shouldn't own a car, because everything you have is just a gift waiting to be given away. And comes to understand the impulse that guides that. And a lot of times, they'll turn to the beginning of Acts, and you see Christians, giving away homes and lands in order to help meet needs. But as I mentioned, as we went through that portion, I know it's been a long time now, but when we went through that portion, what we have to understand is that if everybody does that, and if everybody gives away everything, then everybody is in a constant state of need. If I give away everything and I keep nothing, well, then now I have needs, and now you have to give away everything to me, and now you have needs, and so on and so forth. And so it's not give away everything, and it's not that you intentionally live a life of poverty, but it's that when you can, you give, and you give out of the goodness of your heart. And it is the impetus upon Christians to help and support others, particularly those who need it. And that should be within the heart of Christians to show love in that particular way. But it's not wrong to have things. It's not wrong to have a God who loves you and has blessed you with certain various things. And as Constable said, there's sometimes even luxurious things. What is wrong is to squander those things. What is wrong is to heap up those treasures as if that's what matters and that's what's most important. We have to have the right perspective about these things. But it's not wrong to have those things and to enjoy them as gifts from God. And put into the right position and the right perspective in our lives, we can see that God lavishly gives to those who love him in ways that go beyond just the spiritual. And he gives more to some. We know that, but this is not something that we have to have this constant mindset that, well, if I have if I have something that some people might consider a luxury, just to consider that this dreadful thing that I have to get rid of immediately because there are people who don't have these particular gifts. This is a personal example in this, I guess. But several years ago, when we were pregnant with, I can't remember if it was April or Ellie now, but my parents called me, and they said, well, I think it was when Beth was pregnant with Ellie, and they called and said, what's kind of the biggest need that you have right now? And I told them, I said, well, we had the April so recently. We have most of the stuff that we need just from friends and everything. The biggest thing we have right now is a vehicle. 4 kids, 4 car seats. It's not easy to fit in a lot of cars. And so I just thought they were asking for prayer. They'll help pray for us a car. I had no idea that, I don't know, several months later they would show up with a vehicle for us. And it was a nicer one. It was that old Lincoln that we had. And our, Dad told me, he said, just, this is a nice vehicle. Just be prepared. You might get some comments. And sure enough, we got some comments. I don't know if Beth ever did, but I did. And it's just one thing that people see this as, we didn't pay for it. This wasn't something we asked for. I had no idea it was coming our way. God blessed us with it. He used my parents to be the vehicle through which he blessed us with it, but God blessed us with it. And so instead of just thinking, well, we can't have this nice thing. We need to give this away. We need to sell this. We need to, no, we had a need. God met that need, and we just give glory to God for it. And so, these are things that we have to have the right perspective. Now, again, we don't want the pursuit of money, the pursuit of things to be the driving force for everything that we do. But we do want to be able to sit back and say, God, you love us enough to have gifted us with these things. We're going to enjoy them, and we're going to give you the glory for them. And that's the right mindset. That's a good attitude to have. And so Solomon continues on here. And so he observes that, try as hard as we might, we're not really in control of anything. And we're truly not. In the word of a sovereign God, I don't really control. He says, time and chance happeneth to them all. Time and chance happeneth to them all. He likens us to fish caught in a net. All right? You think you're going one way, and you think you're in control of everything, and here along comes this net, and suddenly you're powerless. And so we're powerless to stop certain things from happening. We're certainly not the master of our fate. That's that old poem, Invictus, that Stoic poem. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. That's what they like to think, but that's certainly not true. And so Solomon closes this section with the sort of a parable. And the parable that he gives, the story is this small city that has been besieged by this great king. And this great king comes upon this small city, and they set up all the bulwarks. And essentially the imagery that Solomon is using is, as the king comes and he uses all the technology available to him to bring the city to naught. And again, we're talking about a small city and a great king. And so he is going to be able to outdo them in anything that they could muster as far as the defense is concerned. And so they come and they besiege the city. They're using all this technology, and things look very, very bleak and very, very drear until this poor wise man, as Solomon describes him, this poor wise man, it says, by his wisdom delivered the city. Now, he doesn't tell us how he does this, but, this is a parable, so that's really the important thing. And so this poor wise man comes up with some kind of plan. The plan is successful. The city is saved. And so you would think that with something like that, as great of an action as that is a man who would be remembered. But Solomon goes on to lament the fact that as time goes on, that man was forgotten. And this is really true. When we through history, we can think of a lot of wars and a lot of important events, and events are almost always remembered more than the people involved with those events. There's never people who are remembered, but we're more likely to remember the great events than the people involved with them. And so Solomon is lamenting the fact that this great wisdom was not appreciated. And so he points out, he says, wisdom is better than strength. Right? He's lamenting this. Why can we not remember this man's name? Why cannot we not remember what this man has done? Because wisdom is better than strength. And this is true. That is a true statement. However, it is also true, as he points out, that the poor man's wisdom is despised and his words are not heard. Why? Why is the poor man's wisdom not heard? It's because his station in life lends others to deem him as one to not remember, one to not care about, one to look down upon. And so this brings Solomon to the realization that as strong as wisdom is, in a fallen world, again, under the sun, in a fallen world, it is often overlooked by the loud cry heard by fools or a weapon in the hand of a sinner. And so, in other words, what he's saying is he's giving this parable to talk about the fact that as people living in a fallen world, if what you're searching for or if what you're seeking is to live amongst the platitudes of your peers, more often than not, you're going to fail in that endeavor. Let me quote Kidner here. He says, "The parable is not a moral tale to show what people should do. It is a cautionary tale to show what they are like. If we are to identify with anybody, it is with the poor wise man, not as though we should fancy ourselves as universal consultants, simply that, sadly enough, we should learn not to count on anything as fleeting as public gratitude." And so what comes to mind is, anytime you talk about seeking the platitudes of men, it seems like politics is kind of the greatest example of this, because you have so many politicians who their views are simply the views of the populace, right? The views that they espouse will change with the times. They don't actually have any solid beliefs, or even if they do, they're willing to leave them behind as long as they can stay with what's popular, because staying with what's popular is what's going to put them in that seat of power. And so if what we're counting on is the platitudes of mankind, or as he mentions there, is public gratitude, number one, that's fleeting. Number two, it's inconsequential. And number three, as a Christian, we've been promised by Jesus that they're going to hate us, and not really us, but they're going to hate us because really they hate Christ. And so this is something that we shouldn't look forward to. And so we have to remember here that the praise of men is the wrong motivation. Well, that's not what Solomon is trying to tell us, right? The praise of men is the wrong motivation, because we know Colossians 3:23, "And whatsoever you do, do it heartily as unto the Lord and not unto men." And so we have the blessing, I guess you could say, the ability to look back upon this from a New Testament context. And I'm not trying to say that Solomon was trying to submit something else, but we have the benefit of looking back through this with the New Testament lens and showing us verses like what we just read here in Colossians. But again, Solomon he's coming to the end of this grand societal secular experiment. And so we've only got a few chapters left in the book, and so he's going to wind these down to a very few pertinent thoughts, kind of concluding these experiments that he's done. And we mentioned this in the introduction, but they're surprising almost. It's not really what you might think he would come to as a conclusion, given all that he's done. But when you really understand it, it makes perfect sense. And so as we continue to look through this week by week, again, we're seeing some things that seem so genuine, some things that seem realistic, and then we have a reminder that things may seem this way, but oftentimes they work in a very different way. And that's because oftentimes we look at the world and we're looking at it, whether or not intentionally doing so, we're looking at it from that same perspective. And it's like we forget that we live in a world that God is sovereign over. It's like we forget that we live in a world in which God created and rules over. Sometimes we ask these same questions that Solomon is asking. Why is there so much evil in the world? Why does it seem like sometimes the righteous are elevated, the wicked are elevated and the righteous are brought low? And so we have to constantly remind ourselves, as I feel Solomon had to do as well, that we are a very finite part of the infinite plan of an infinite God, and we don't have all those answers. And so when we're looking at the world, all we're seeing is what's under the sun, and there's a whole lot beyond the sun that we don't see, that we don't realize, that we won't know this side of the sun. And so we'll get those answers one day. But that's where Solomon, that's the perspective he's coming from. And so he's quickly drawing this book to a close, to some very interesting conclusions that we'll see here in just a couple of weeks. All right.